Good evening. Welcome to BUL 3583, Legal Aspects of Sustainability. We are group number 4, consisting of Elizabeth Winans, Nohelia, Puerto, Garrido, Adam Plantz, and Michael Morgan. In our motion today, we'll discuss the issue of whether or not Move Farms violated the Florida Air and Water Pollution Control Act. Let us take a further look into the defendant's motion of Lake Bend versus Move Farms Dairy.
Sunnydale Park is part of the Lake Bend community along the Monson River in Florida. Move Farms Dairy is located 5 miles south of Lake Bend community. Therefore, Lake Bend population is concerned about livestock activity from the farm, the animal waste to be more specific, claiming that it frequently contributes to contamination. However, Move Farms has made this kind of problem a priority. They have been taking action on improving cattle feeding every year. And also, when the farm was built, they made sure to install the proper waste mitigation system along the river. On the other hand, the Florida Right to Farm law helps to protect reasonable agriculture operations carried out on a farmland from disturbance claims and other legal action.
Given that Lake Bend is a natural resource that originally came from the Monson River, Move Farms Dairy is unable to restrict community access to this area or the use of it for recreation. However, in order to protect this resource and therefore the community from contamination, a barrier of riverbank plants was developed from the beginning of its activities. Unfortunately, a flooding caused by a natural disaster occurred in the area and the health concerns began. After the proper investigations and samples, bacteria coliform was discovered to be the cause of health issues being found in both animal and human fecal matter. Nevertheless, I think it's important to note that Move Farms Dairy is not the only dairy farm that runs along the Monson River.
In the case of Lake Bend versus Move Farms Dairy, the Code of Federal Regulations under Title 21 of the CFR, which is reserved for rules of the Food and Drug Administration, Chapter 1, FDA, Part 112 Standards for the Growing, Harvesting, Packing, and Holding of Produce for Human Consumption, states that in its Subpart E, for agricultural water, followed in Section B, you must adequately maintain all agricultural water distribution systems to the extent that they are under your control as necessary and appropriate to prevent the water distribution system from being a source of contamination to covered produce, food contact surfaces, areas used for a covered activity, or water sources, including by regularly inspecting and adequately storing all equipment used in the system.
In the case of Lake Bend versus Move Farms Dairy, the following must be considered. Contaminants were found in samples taken at the following farms: Cadillac Cattle Farm, Henderson Horse Farm, Farmer Joe's Livestock Ranch, and Move Farms Dairy. This implies multiple liable parties. When Move Farms Dairy was purchased in 2010, riverbank plants were planted along the property that borders the Monson River. Move Farms Dairy had taken precautions to protect the waterways near their property from any harm that may have been presented by their farming operations. The Florida Right to Farm Act's main objective is to defend reasonable agricultural and related agritourism operations carried out on farmland against nuisance claims and other related legal actions. Thus, this law should be considered when attempting to place blame on Move Farms Dairy and other small farms in the immediate area. Cause and effect. Move Farms Dairy is the largest dairy farm in the area, but there is no indication that this single party is the cause for the contamination in Lake Bend. Additionally, no evidence was generated that effluent was intentionally or unintentionally distributed into the Monson River or any other body of water. While samples taken on the property show contaminants, there is not enough information available to show cause and effect. Natural disasters, such as the one that occurred in 2021, transport materials from its original home to any possible area the storm reached. The contaminants present in the Lake Bend community drinking water may have come from anywhere the storm impacted.
Rationale continued. It is well known that some manure from agricultural operations are redistributed on the fields for nutrient amending. This process, under the right conditions, could create a presence of the contaminants in site water samples. Contaminants of this nature do not constitute as solid waste due to the nature in which they are released. As a fertilizer, the manure is released in a controlled manner applicable to the needs of the field. This method of disbursement keeps the potential for health hazard and public harm minimal.
In our opinion, some things that could be done differently to prevent this situation from happening in the future is to redefine the effluent management program based on current best practices and modern technology capabilities. Additionally, any fertilizing activities should be halting during the expectation of heavy precipitation to mitigate stormwater runoff from such activities. After adverse weather effects, effluent containment, be it pond or storage containers, should be closely monitored for signs of compromise and accidental release. Thorough records should be kept of all activities, weather, percentages of containers filled, and soil and water samples, and these records should be maintained so that if local ecology is impacted with events of contamination, they could assess the records for comparison to see if there are any similarities between the farm samples and the values of the environmental samples taken.
For the reasons stated above, Moo Farms Dairy respectfully requests that this court affirm the district court's holdings that 1. The Munson River is not a publicly navigable waterway subject to a public right of navigation. 2. Evidence obtained pursuant to contamination is inadmissible in a civil enforcement proceeding under the FDA. 3. Moo Farm is not a Title 21 subject to FDA permitting. 4. Moo Farms is exempted from FDA permitting by the agricultural stormwater exemption. 5. Moo Farms manure and acid way mixture is not a solid waste under the Florida Air and Water Pollution Control Act. And finally, 6. The manure and acid way mixture does not constitute an imminent and substantial endangerment to human health. We thank you for listening to our defendant's motion of this case of Lake Bend versus Moo Farms Dairy. We ask that you have any questions or concerns regarding this case study that you direct them to our team group number 4, consisting of Adam Plantz, Elizabeth Winans, Nohelia, Puerto, Garrido, or Michael Morgan. When a legal team is well honed to the task at hand and mutually supportive, it creates an exciting and dynamic synergy that is both extremely effective and great fun for the participants. Anyone who's gone through a prolonged trial, arbitration, or negotiation working with a team soon realizes that the shared experience and excitement forms bonds that simply make the work far more enjoyable and productive. That, in turn, leads to better work done with a cheerful and enthusiastic success. We thank you.